Blake and Aaron's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
K-Man's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Hey, Sandy, good morning. What do you got for us this morning?
Hey, morning, Blake and Aaron. How are you guys doing?
Just say yes or no. Did they catch the person on foot in pursuit yesterday?
We don't have any confirmation, but I do believe they did.
Good.
I don't have any reason to believe that they haven't been caught. So,
okay.
Yes, I think that we'll probably get some sort of an official update. So there was a police chase in case everybody's like, what's going on?
Yeah, Aaron was in front of the white van that got smashed into.
That the cops were not letting us move out of the way. They weren't directing traffic. They should have directed us out of the way if they knew it was a high-speed police chase coming at us. Anyway.
Yeah, so there was a police chase yesterday. It was a bit of excitement in the afternoon. Quite a few people witnessed portions of it and sort of saw, what was going on. So pretty scary that Aaron just happened to have been in the wrong place at the wrong time.
I was inches away from being hit by the white car, by the white van. If it was a Honda Fit, I don't know how well they'd be today. Anyway.
Yeah. So pretty crzy. And I completely understand how you feel, Aaron, because I've been in a similar situation with a police chase.
Okay.
So Off-Reg is investigating what they say is slow internet and mobile service in Little Cayman. They had a community meeting several days ago where they were able to meet with the Little Cayman residents, all 200 of them, but 95 of them showed up, and residents and business owners saying that they've been struggling for a while. And so now Off-Reg has launched an official investigation, but we've been told that Flo is now on it, and hopefully this will make something happen relatively soon.
All right, Sam, we gotta jump on 89.1 FM. We'll see you tomorrow for the Friday headline.
Premier Wayne Panton is going to be on the show. Just FYI.
Yeah, join us right now.
All right, Aaron, what you got coming up? Bigger on next.
Ooh,
Bigger, better, bolder. The cold, hard truth is taking talk to the next level. Right here on Bobo 89.1 FM, Cayman's Community Radio. We are still spilling the tea and committed to being part of the change that Cayman so desperately needs. Join Sandy Hill weekdays from 7:30 a.m. for Premier Access, Cayman Voices, Truthful Thursdays, and much more. Cayman's #1 talk show is now bigger, better, bolder, and more than talk. Getting results with hot topics, consumer reports, court exposés, and more.
I've come to set the record straight. I've come to shine the light on you. Let me introduce myself. I am the cold, hard truth.
Now, from the CMR studio in Grand Cayman, live, direct, it's the cold, hard truth. Now, join the conversation on 345-936-2626.
That number again is
345-936-2626.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. It is February the 9th already. Can you imagine? So good conversation on tap for you today. Good morning to everyone. I do have a hard, and I do mean a hard stop this morning to get out of here. So I'm just making sure that I am as organized with my time markers as possible. Good morning. This show is sponsored by Burger King. Thank you so much, Burger King, for sponsoring several of our shows every single week, brought to you courtesy of Burger King, making it possible for us to bring you even more exciting content. So they have lots of wonderful breakfast options at Burger King. Just FYI, if you're not on a diet like myself, go and enjoy one of those. And even if you are on a diet, there are some healthier choices that are available on the menu. So today, folks, we've got Premier Access that is back and in full swing. Really, really tickled pink. I know a lot of you have been, just messaging me nonstop, I should say. When is the Premier coming back? Well, the answer is today. He's coming back today, honey chill. So let me just remove this little image here. Yes, my darling, he's coming back today. So what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about the National Conservation Law, of course, which has been, the hot topic of the minute. Last night I went to a function. I'm going to tell you guys about that tomorrow because this is a really good. I'm glad that I went. It's something that I want you guys to really, really support in relation to recovering addicts. And they had a little sort of, reception afterwards, just, a couple of drinks or whatever. And so I was speaking to someone who, lives here in the Cayman Islands. And the conversation was so interesting, but I'm going to save that for you guys. Needless to say, he was also of the opinion that, oh my gosh, why do people get so attached to certain conversations? Like, there've been issues of national importance and things that we really needed to be jumping on. And those things did not garner the type of attention that this did. And I said, sir, I do believe, quite frankly, that there are a number of reasons for that. Some of them logical in terms of human nature. And quite frankly, humans are very illogical. I don't know if I told you all this, but we are. And so sometimes, despite the fact that we wish to believe that we operate on logic as the foundation of making decisions, the truth is most humans operate on emotions. We're very emotional creatures, and we have an idea in our head, and whether that idea is right or wrong or scientifically based, we're going to stick to it almost to the death. It's like, no matter what, yeah, that's my idea. I always try to encourage people to sometimes don't be so quick to decide about something one way or the other. Kind of sit back and take a minute and reflect on whether a position is worth you taking, saying yes on this, yes or no. And the other thing that we were discussing, and he said, is that my imagination? He's a little bit older, I must say, but he says, somebody says the wrong show is playing on Bobo. I don't know what that means. How can the wrong show be playing if it's a live show? The wrong show is playing on Bobo. Huh. Okay, now that's a new one for me. It's supposed to be a live show, so I have no clue what that even means. I don't know how that's possible. Anyway, all right. Well, we will certainly inquire about that one. There's always a first for everything. So anyway, he was inquiring about whether or not I'm not in Bobo. Okay. All right. I don't know what's going on this morning. Oh, I know exactly what's going on this morning. Look at me sitting here talking about I don't know what's going on this morning. And it turns out I should know because it's completely my mistake. All right, hold on. Let me get a hold of Chuck here this morning. Give me 1 second, good folks. Yeah, so I was saying that I'm just trying to get this technical issue in the background sorted out so we make sure we're live on radio. But the guy said to me, does it seem like people are a bit more extreme in their views? And I thought about it for a second. I thought, it is interesting. And I don't really know because, I can only talk about sort of my point of reference. But I kind of think that maybe that is a possibility, right? I mean, think about it. I don't know how old you guys, we've got a huge range of ages. So some of you might have been around during the protests of like the 60s and 70s. And do you think people were as extreme in their positions, like as polarized? And I kind of said to him, just looking at some of the footage historically, I guess that I would have seen in relation to, somebody says I'm now on radio. Oh, praise the Lord for that. That I would have seen in relation to probably, the protests of, like, I'm just thinking, like, whatever they were protesting about in the 70s, for example, or the 60s, right? I kind of, I don't know, I'm a little bit torn. Like, I do feel like maybe it was more peaceful in a way. Were people more peaceful then? But then there was a lot of times that it wasn't peaceful. Like they were throwing grenades and bombs and protesting in the streets and people being dragged down and assaulted by police. And so I'm like, I don't know. I think humans are we are very, very capable of getting attached to particular things. And oftentimes that means that, we just get really, really passionate about, my gosh, I don't even know. It's just crazy. Like it does occur to me that maybe the technology in this day and age allows viral messages that have no foundation in any real truth to go a lot further than they would have otherwise. I do think kind of as a result of that maybe people are a little bit more polarized than they used to be. I'm going to look into this because, like I just said to you, sometimes I don't like to form an opinion on something because I want to see if there's any research on it to kind of, tell me if it's yay or if it's nay. We'll see. We'll see, honey chow. All right, let's get the show rolling. I think we are good to go now. I think you guys are confirming that I'm trying to pick a new headshot here for my little avatar. So give me 1 second. I'm going to get that sorted out. So yes, I think that we are good to go. Look at me. Got my 4 eyes and everything. All right, folks, we've got Premier Panton on the show this morning. We're going to be talking about feral cats and all the stuff that has you guys all up in your feelings. And I should warn you that this show is going to be one that is going to be based on facts today. And I guess if you don't like facts, well, go somewhere else. But if you are interested in hearing the facts, and I'm going to challenge you to put your feelings aside on this topic, because a lot of those are based on an emotive position. Let us really talk about what we know. And we've got some evidence because y'all been challenging people left, right, and center. Well, these cute little kittens and cats, they're not harming nobody. They're not eating nothing. That's somebody else eating it. It's not them. Well, not so fast, honey child, because we've got the video evidence. We've got the proof that, in fact, it is those little cats that you think are so cute, which, by the way, when they're out in the wild, they're actually not that cute at all, but that's a whole other discussion. But we're going to show you the reality of their life as well. What they're having to deal with. Oh, Lord Jesus, it's so sad. Y'all need to do better. We're not doing the cats any justice by thinking that letting them run wild is some sort of freedom for them. But anyway, here we go. Premier Access. Happy Thursday, y'all.
The Cold Hard Truth now has your Premier Access with Premier Panton.
Hello everyone, this is Wayne Panton. Come and join me on Cayman Mar Road's Premier Access every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. for a frank and open Q&A session. I'm here to answer your questions about the issues that concern you the most. Tune in to YouTube and Facebook Live on Wednesday. We will see you there.
Full transparency, answering your questions, down to earth, accountable, and accessible to who matters. You. Don't miss Premier Access on the Cold Hard Truth, spilling the tea like no one else.
All right, folks, and no, you're not confused. It is not Wednesday, it's Thursday. We do need to update that. But anyway, we will get to that in due course. In the meantime, welcome to the Honorable Premier Wayne Panton. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sandra. And let me say a special good morning to all of your listeners and those who are watching. At least we get to see your headshot.
I'm gonna. Don't worry. You're
I don't know what else. You seem to have some technical difficulties this morning, but that's okay.
Yeah, you're gonna see me here in a second. Don't worry.
It's all working good.
Yes, but happy New Year.
And, yeah, absolutely. I want to. I did Radio came on at the beginning of the week, and I certainly want to take, even though we're into the the end of the first week of February or first part of February, I certainly want to take the opportunity to wish all the best and a wonderful, happy, safe, productive, prosperous 2023 to all of our wonderful residents and citizens of the Cayman Islands.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you so much for joining the show this morning. So good morning to everyone who's here. We've got Jonathan, Alejandro, Sarah, Wanda, Cayman Mobile Detailing, Vicky's in the house, Olivia, Marshall joining us from North Carolina, Stephen from the UK, Miss Barbara, John Levy, Wee, who else? Miss Vernita, lots of familiar faces, and many, many more who just sit back and silently watch the program. Good morning to one. Karen is here. Karen saying good morning. So good morning to one and good morning to all. So yes, this discussion, Premier, about feral cats and chickens has really taken over in a way that that has really surprised, I think, even me. The alien species regulations has kicked it off. Now, the law we know has been in place, I believe, since 2013, the National Conservation Act, which I think is still called the National Conservation Law, by the way. And then we've got the Animals Act, which is 2015. All of these things were part and parcel of eventually getting to the alien species regulation, which is a 2022 piece of document. So, I get it. I get that as human beings, we love, and I know you're an animal lover yourself. We love fuzzy things. I remember my first pet that I, consider a pet of my own, like I made a decision, was a little hamster. And boy, that little hamster, his name was Oscar, and I loved him like you would not believe. And, we just get attached to these things, and we have preconceived notions. I was like, oh, I'm just going to let him out in my aunt's house and he could just run around. My aunt was like, child, I'm going to put down a rat trap for your little hamster if you don't keep him in the cage, because then, he would eat stuff. So I learned over the years from being, a young child and having a dog in my aunt's house and being responsible, having to walk the dog, feed the dog. I kind of grew up understanding that you can love animals all you want, but the way that you truly show that you love an animal is that you take care of animals that are in your possession, in your control, and you encourage other people to do the same thing. And as a community, we have to do so much better. Like, I really feel like this is one of the areas that we fail all the time is, being true caretakers for animals. And so I'm not surprised when something like this comes up, because everybody thinks, feral cats and chickens are like cute and fuzzy and all this sort of thing. There's a lot of emotion wrapped up when we start talking about what we consider somewhat domesticated, but they're not animals. So tell us a little bit about the history, because I think the history of how we got here is significant. Obviously, your government has been in now coming up on 2 years. Is this something, the alien species regulations, is this something that at the second you got in, you're like, oh yeah, this has got to be at the top of my list that I want to push to get done? Or was this something already on the table? Tell us how this all kind of worked out. I know there were some lawsuits and all sort of stuff. Give us the 411 and how we got here.
Okay. Well, I'll try to give you as a clear picture as possible. I obviously wasn't directly involved in the initial part of it, but basically, let's go back a bit. I think as far back as 2007, perhaps earlier than that, the Department of Environment and the Department of Agriculture have been, both in relation to dogs and feral dogs and feral cats, they've been trapping animals. They have tried to find owners where they can't, where no one claims them. The animals, unfortunately, do get euthanized. So the issue, so that's just an intro in terms of what has happened historically in relation to animals that have not been claimed. The issue in relation to feral cats specifically is a reflection of the reality that we have a problem with cats that are in the wild, that are reproducing rapidly, and people are, they've started off obviously as people's domestic cats, that they just end up, either the cat runs away from home or they end up sort of letting them roam around outside, and they reproduce. Now, a lot of people have been trying to approach it from the perspective of trapping these animals and neutering or spaying them, and then they sometimes try to rehome them. But for cats in particular, it seems that a lot of people have been approaching this from a trap, neuter, and release perspective, which is very distinct from how people and how the organizations such as the Humane Society approach the situation with dogs. You would never have anybody saying that it's appropriate and okay to trap, neuter, spay, whatever, and release dogs back into, communities and to run around wild. Obviously, dogs are typically bigger animals. They can be very problematic. They can be aggressive to human beings. They can cause a lot of problems, roaming around. But cats are equally capable of causing a lot of damage and destruction. And the way they do that is they are doing what they're genetically programmed to do. No matter whether you feed them or whether they're left to their own devices, they are going to be out roaming around. They will kill birds. They will kill lizards. They will kill iguanas. Anything that they can really get their hands on, paws on. And sometimes it's just an instinctive thing. They do it. Perhaps they're not even going to feed, but it's just what they do. Sometimes they obviously do it, and they do feed on the creatures that they take down, the other animals and birds and stuff that they take down. So we have recognized, the Department of Environment, Department of Agriculture, obviously have recognized for some time, a long time, that this is a problem, and that they're predating the indigenous birds, the indigenous animals of the Cayman Islands. And there's clear evidence of this. We have the documentary evidence, we've got video evidence, we've got pictures. And one of the things that's been really surprising is that nobody really, people understood that there was a problem, but nobody really understood the extent of the problem until the DOE, for example, and perhaps the DOA as well, until they started putting these trap cameras in different locations in the wild, so that the point of those is that if an animal passes by, it triggers the camera to either turn on and do a video, or it takes a picture. And that's when it became very, very clear that there was a tremendous problem with feral. Well, the problem was even greater than first suspected with feral cats in particular. So you know that we have this fantastic program, for example, for the blue iguanas. Blue iguanas were almost extinct at one point. They are very identifiable as, an animal, indigenous Caymanian animal that we're all proud of. And people like Mr. Fred Burton and others, including people through the National Trust, have been involved with the Blue Iguana Recovery Program, and it's been successful. We've grown in numbers through having them maintained in captivity and bred in captivity, and then the young ones released. But one of the interesting things, we're not seeing a lot of younger blue iguanas that were, as much as would have been expected given the numbers that have been released into the wild. So the thinking was, we would start to see much more young blue iguanas, in around the Salinas area, for example, in East End, where they've typically been released, and that's obviously a protected area for those animals. And to try to understand why and what was happening, they put these trap cameras out in that area, a number of them in different locations around the Salinas. And lo and behold, what kept coming up on the trap cameras was feral cats. So it is very likely that the feral cat population there is clearly much greater than was first anticipated. I mean, I don't think anybody really thought it was that significant a problem. But clearly the evidence dictates and shows that is the case. And I think the clear assumption is that, as we've found in other areas, including places like the BRAC or Sister Islands, those cats are very likely preying on young blue iguanas and keeping those populations down and preventing the growth of the wild population of blue iguanas. We have the same experience in Little Cayman and in Cayman Brac. Little Cayman in particular, the feral cats have been identified. I didn't really understand the extent of the problem myself either. As you know, I visit Little Cayman often, as often as I can, not as often as I used to. But I drive around and occasionally you might see a cat. But I decided I was going to deliberately try to find cats and try to keep an eye out. And basically, you have to look down the road. You can't just drive around like normal and make sure that there's nothing in front of you. You have to really look down the road, and you have to use different techniques to make sure you catch these cats, because they're very
stealth. I mean, they're
not going to stand beside the road and wave at you.
Right.
So I did start seeing a lot more cats, and I realized that this is an issue, and this is the Department of Environment, Department of Agriculture have been aware of this issue for some time. So
yes.
Have we been trapping and culling cats in the past? Yes.
Nothing new.
It's nothing new to that, and the issue has even become even more significant because of the extent to which there's more and more evidence that they are preying on the population of red-footed boobies, which is, Little Cayman has the largest breeding colony of red-footed boobies in the Western Hemisphere. They're also preying on the young Sister Islands rock iguanas in Little Cayman. And so for some time, and just to give you some stats, I think back in 2007, a number of cats were trapped and eventually humanely euthanized. They were feral cats. And that was 2007. Just going to give you a few numbers and time indications. So in 2017, 2018, that would have been in the previous administration. I think something like 30 cats were trapped and were humanely euthanized. And these efforts were continuing until the Humane Society and the Feline Friends, I think that's what it's called, Feline Friends something, which was just sort of an unincorporated association, perhaps an NPO, I'm not sure what it is. But they effectively brought judicial review against the DOE/DOA, Department of Agriculture and DOE, to prevent these cullings from occurring. That was a piece of litigation that dragged on for a long time, and it was, I think, eventually settled around the middle part of last year, of 2022. There had been a sort of a stalemate in the sense that the Department of Environment, Department of Agriculture had given an undertaking that they wouldn't do any further culling until the issues were resolved. And the central issue was this, that there were no regulations around the trapping and around dealing with invasive species or alien species. So because of the various negotiations and discussions around that, we ended up having these set of alien species regulations prepared, and it was a direct result, and I think a good result of the action by the Humane Society at the time and Feline Friends.
Okay, so can I just pause you right there, because I think I want to make sure that people are understanding some of the key points that you've made thus far. This has been something, number one, that didn't just start last week or the week before. This has been going on for a really long time. The government, the Department of Environment or Agriculture, which one does the culling?
Well, I think both do.
Okay.
But it's mainly going to, when it comes to alien species that are predating on our indigenous species, that's typically going to be led by the Department of Environment.
Right. Okay. So they have been catcalling, folks. I want y'all to listen very carefully to what the Premier just said, because you might have missed it. He said they have been catcalling for a long time. It's not something that is newly being introduced. They have been doing it. The problem has been that they were doing it without the benefit of proper regulations in place. So the technocrats, the civil servants, my apologies, those who work in the Department of Environment were challenged legally about whether or not this is something that can be done. One of the outcomes of that legal challenge, my apologies, is that there has to be some regulation around this, and there has to be some standards and legal footing for this to be able to be done as it was anyway. But so that everyone knows what the procedure is, that's the process and why we have laws and regulations in place, because they codify what may have been done for centuries sometimes, but they put it in writing, and then everybody's on the same page. You can pick up the regulations. You can read what the regulations say. Maybe there were some things that were being done that the public did not even know and you were not aware of. But I now want you to understand, cat culling is not new. It has been happening. The regulations are something new. So let me ask you this question, Premier. So obviously you inherited this problem. Everyone is trying to come to a viable solution. Can you explain to us, I do have some questions that are coming in relation to this. What is the process? Because a lot of people, I try to do my best that I can in this show to the best of my understanding, explain how the process works. How does something become law? How does something, get regulations attached to it? What are regulations? So in the most common language possible, right? Explain how regulations can come into force and there's no public consultation, because that's what someone's saying to me. Why are there no public consultation on regulations? To the best of my knowledge, there never is public consultation on regulations. There's public consultation on the law itself. Is that correct?
No, sometimes you do have public consultation on regulations.
Okay.
It varies. It depends. You're never going to see a situation where every piece of legislation ends up in extended public consultation, or regulations end up in extended public consultation. Obviously, there's two things we're talking about here. One is primary legislation, which is a law, an act. And by the way, the National Conservation Law was passed in 2013, but by virtue of Parliament becoming independent, the legislation around that, all laws in the Cayman Islands are now called acts, right? So it's the National Conservation Act.
Actually, Premier, this is a bit of a quandary, but I want you to put this on your list, because we were actually talking about this last week, and I verified that for some reason that piece of legislation, Miss Judy was going to check on why this is, still has the word law in it. So it
would be any law that was passed and published prior to 20.
No, but most of them have actually been changed, right? So this is a National Conservation Law 2013. Can you find out why that isn't the National Conservation Act? Because this is something that confused us last week, and Judy didn't know why, and she was going to check, but maybe you could get an answer quicker. It's just a matter of semantics, but I am curious.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to
we're not going to get boggled down in that now. We're just making a little note.
I'm just going to check right now, looking up at legislation.gov.ky.
It says National Conservation Law 2013.
No, well, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at the list right now. So anybody who wants to find laws that either represent existing legislation or legislation which is not enforced yet, you can also find repeal spent acts. There's a whole range of things.
It's all online, yeah.
Legislation.gov.ky is maintained by the Attorney General's Chambers, and it has a really convenient list. So when I click on there's a alphabet at the top. You click on the name that begins with the correct letter.
Yeah.
I can look at and find the National Conservation Act 2013. Now, when I bring up, what it does is it brings up a scanned copy, a PDF copy, not scanned, it's a PDF dated copy of the original law. And it does say National Conservation Law 2013. But it is, in fact, called the National Conservation Act 2013 now.
All right, that's confusing, because why wouldn't they just have in the text of it the proper name? But anyway, semantics. And DOE's website still says National Conservation Law when it makes reference to it. But anyway, all right.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, that's one of the issues that, we've got to make sure that government websites and many websites are really up to date with these types of things. People just haven't gotten around to making those changes. But that's what the position is. Okay. So you have legislation which goes to Parliament, which is a bill, right? You have let me just forget about the original part of it. What we currently have today, constitutionally, is a requirement to have 28 days notice for the consideration of bills in Parliament. So they have to be published, gazetted, for at least 28 clear days prior to being debated in Parliament. That period can be shortened if the Premier certifies that it's appropriate to shorten that period, and that will be if there is, for example, an emergency type situation or or a significant degree of urgency in dealing with that. So that it is possible to effectively short notice it, but it's typically 28 days. That 28 days allows the public, allows the opposition to review legislation and be prepared and ready to submit comments. And those comments can be submitted at any time. The government can consider those comments, and when it comes to Parliament to debate it, government may be in a position where they agree with a number of changes, and they have already filed a number of proposed amendments that would be dealt with in committee stage for the bill. But anyway, a bill goes through the parliamentary process, through the debate. It goes through first, second, and third readings. It goes to committee stage after the second reading, at which you make any changes, and then it goes to third reading, and then it's passed. And once it's passed, then it would go. Whether it comes into effect depends on the terms of it. It may say it comes into effect as soon as it's assented to and published, after it's passed by Parliament, or it may have a provision which says that Cabinet may determine to what extent and which provisions come into effect by ordering in Cabinet, or by commencement order. So that's the bill. And then you may have secondary legislation which is created by regulations. If the primary legislation provides a power for Cabinet to adopt regulations, to further clarify certain aspects, clarify a procedure, to set out relevant information in relation to the primary legislation which assists, then Cabinet can do that. That doesn't have anything to do with Parliament. That is passed in Cabinet. Oftentimes, it does not get the same degree of, but it doesn't get published in the way that primary legislation does, and a decision, a view has to be taken on whether and the extent to which it's appropriate to have public consultation. In relation to these particular regulations that were adopted pursuant to the National Conservation, pursuant to a power set out in the National Conservation Act, because of the extensive discussions that had occurred around the issue of trapping and culling of feral cats. I think the Department of Environment felt that there had been sufficient clarity on the issue, and they didn't. There wasn't a recommendation to do public consultation on the issue because we had the two relevant parties engaged in the discussion. Now, those regulations were adopted pursuant to a power under the National Conservation Act, which the relevant provision basically says that the National Conservation Council can develop criteria for determining whether wild populations or proposed introductions of alien or genetically altered species might cause harm to any of the natural resources of the islands, and procedures for regulating and controlling such populations and introductions. So it is pursuant to that particular provision that these regulations were effectively adopted. And as I said, because of the litigation brought about by the Humane Society and Feline Friends, there was an agreement that there was regulations were missing. I think what had happened was that there was a feeling that the Department of Agriculture, regulations issued by or through the Department of Agriculture, or the recommendation of the Department of Agriculture under the Animals Act, provided sufficient authority. But I think that the clear or close review of those powers as a result of the litigation clarified that wasn't the case. So it was agreed that these regulations needed to be adopted under the National Conservation Act, and that's how they came about. So they were adopted to really regulate what was already being done, and perhaps being done without sufficient primary or secondary legislative clarity and authority. So that, and as I said, this isn't anything new. In 2007, 30 cats were humanely euthanized, trapped and humanely euthanized in Little Cayman. In 2017 and between 2017 and 2018, I think there was about 24 that were trapped and humanely euthanized. Since then, there have been some more, but obviously none during the period in which the litigation existed and the undertaking was given. And the giving of the undertaking was effectively the same as a court issuing an injunction to say, don't do anything, right?
So the undertaking essentially meant that the regulations would be put in place at that point before any cats were further culled.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. Now
Correct.
let me ask a question, because it obviously seems that a lot of people are confused about what they say appears to be some sort of secretive undertaking, right? So someone just said, well, why was this all done in secret? I mean, it doesn't seem to me that it would have been done in secret if there was a lawsuit around it and, all these other things in place. Is it a case that people are just not paying attention until something is finally done, which I find probably happens a lot in this community? But did the Department of Environment have any public discussion on this after the court basically said, put the legislation in place?
Well, I don't think the court actually did say that. I think, as I said, the parties came to the
agreement.
It was agreed that, look, these regulations should be in place in order to govern this activity, and there was insufficient authority under the Animals Act to do this. As far as I'm aware, there was the fact that this judicial review was occurring had been publicized. The fact that there was an undertaking had been publicized. But I think some of these issues are, people don't perhaps pay attention unless they have a specific interest until, something in particular comes along. And then it becomes something that gets elevated in the public's mind and consciousness. So I don't think there's anything in the way of, any attempt to keep anything quiet or to hide anything. I think that, there have been reports in the past about the extent to which trapping and culling of feral animals like this have been done. We all know that it happens with dogs. I think there was a report on, I know that the deputy leader of the opposition was on Radio Cayman yesterday morning, commenting on this as well. And I noted that there was a report, I think it was in sometime around 2017, 2018, perhaps, maybe 2019, where his cat, I don't know whether this was an outdoor cat or a cat that just usually kept indoors and happened to go outside for a bit, was attacked, killed by some dogs. And 7 dogs were euthanized on that occasion, around that situation, as far as I'm aware. And it seemed to have been a public discussion, and it was reported.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I'm not sure I understand is why people feel that it's appropriate. And I know it's a difficult decision, right? As you said before, I'm an animal lover, and I know that it's a hard decision to make. I certainly wouldn't want to be the person doing it. I had to put down one of my cherished dogs a couple months ago, and I cried like a baby. I love my animals. If you love people, if you love animals, I think it reflects positively on you. And it is hard. I mean, I've lost lots of pets over the years, and it's always traumatic. So I don't like the idea of doing it, but if I have to trade maintaining and protecting the viability of the survival of our indigenous flora and fauna, and particularly birds and animals and reptiles, if I have to cull cats and dogs in order to make sure that we can maintain the viability and survival of those indigenous animals, that's a decision that I can live with. I wouldn't want to have to do it, but I can live with it because it's necessary. It's essential for us. Cats and dogs, and in this case in particular cats, are not they're not indigenous. They're introduced by human beings, and they're people have them as pets, and then they eventually end up in the wild, and they reproduce significantly in the wild. And some of these cats have never been domesticated. They're entirely wild. And to be honest, when these cats are trapped, they have vets that are involved in this. They're veterinary surgeons that are involved in this process of assessing the cats and ultimately humanely euthanizing them. They find their health to be absolutely atrocious, terrible. They're suffering from, some of them are suffering from feline AIDS, feline leukemia. They have broken teeth. They have broken legs. They have sores. They have lacerations. They're absolutely infested with things like tapeworms and roundworms, and they live miserable lives in the wild, absolutely miserable. And it doesn't matter whether you're feeding them or not. They are going to be doing what they normally do, and that is, they're going to follow their instincts of preying on these animals.
We do have a caller. There's some stuff here that I want to share as well, but let's go ahead and, the caller decided to give us a call back. So when we talk about the fact that this actually isn't anything new, there's a couple things that I do want to share with our viewers. So the first one here is, this is an 11-page document. And as you can see, the internet doesn't lie when it comes to the dates that are produced on documentation, right? So you see this history date here from September of 2021. This goes back quite a ways. As the Premier said, there's been wide discussion on it. And I think if you haven't heard the discussion, maybe the real question is, why were you not paying attention? Because honestly, it isn't anything new. Yeah. And, there's obviously, my apologies. That's not supposed to be up there. There's a petition that came, that has been started. And I saw someone in the petition said something about the fact that the chickens, and we haven't really gotten to chickens yet, but we'll talk about them perhaps here in a minute. But someone said, these chickens, whether you like it or not, chickens are a tourist attraction. I thought to myself, oh my God, is our tourism product that horrible that the best we can do is have feral chickens be what tourists are coming here for and what they're enjoying? And I want to really caution people, because look at what I found on TripAdvisor. This person who stayed at the Wyndham Reef Resort back in 2017 said friendly staff, but too many feral cats. So whilst people hear again, you know, the things that we allow to seep into our head and we accept, oh yeah, the tourists love these things. They really don't, because this tourist said, I recently returned from a trip to this resort with my girlfriends. The staff was friendly and courteous. However, there's an abundance of feral cats that roam the property at leisure. It was not appealing to dine outside with cats constantly walking under tables and chairs. It was also unnerving when walking outside at night, as they frequently darted across sidewalks and pathways. Otherwise, the property was okay. Imagine, right? Someone took the time, a tourist, a visitor, to write a review on, what did I just say? This is TripAdvisor, my apologies, where their review is centered around, from 2017, is centered around their unpleasant experience because of feral cats. And in our minds here in the Cayman Islands, some of you seem to think that feral cats and feral chickens are a good thing and that tourists enjoy this type of an experience. It seems like there's a bit of a disconnect happening. Damien makes a very, very interesting comment. He says all of this controversy could have been avoided if this knowledge was just reported before for people to understand. Are you willing to accept, and I mean, this isn't necessarily, when I say accept, I'm not saying this is your personal responsibility, Premier, but are you willing to accept that maybe the civil service communication arm has failed when it comes to informing people, even on the importance of our indigenous species, such as all of these birds? I mean, here Damien is talking about the different types of birds that we have that are indigenous to the Cayman Islands. Do you think they've done a good job at getting the message across?
You know, it's always a challenge to identify how you're going to deploy your time and resources in communicating various things. And oftentimes you have to try to anticipate if there's going to be the potential for controversy, and you need to spend a lot more time and energy.
Sorry, morning. You're on air. Were you trying to call to be on air?
No, sorry.
Oh, yes. All right, folks. So just remember now, some of you are calling the WhatsApp number to be on air, and I answer it thinking.
Yeah. So the short answer is yes. I mean, sometimes mistakes are made. Sometimes there is a misjudgment of the extent to which something is going to potentially be an issue, and we need to spend a lot more time and resources on information, getting information out to the public, getting clarity out there. I mean, in relation to these regulations, for example, I did anticipate looking at the regulations, at the time we were considering adopting them. I anticipated, for example, in relation to the fees, the fines, I anticipated that there might be a concern around using this omnibus provision, which exists under the National Conservation Act, which is Section 38, which has this provision which says that if you have an offense under this law and there isn't a particular fine or a possible penal provision specified within that particular section, then the general provisions of Section 38 apply. And those general provisions are quite broad to cover a whole range of potential offenses. So it says, you can be fined up to $500,000 and you can go to jail for up to 4 years or both. So I looked at that and I thought, if we just put that there, people, and you have regulations and you have a provision in the law, in the regulation, which says, which is Regulation 18 or Section 18 of the regulations, which says you shouldn't be feeding alien species or genetically modified species in the wild. If it just says the penalty is $500,000, up to $500,000 or 4 years in jail or both, I anticipated people were going to have a little reaction to that. So I had them change the provision of the regulations to provide that, and you look around at any regulations, look around at any law, you rarely see any approach like this, So it reflects a specific concern to make sure that it wasn't perceived as heavy-handed. We put in this graduated provision so that if you on the first time that you're caught doing this, you're breaching the regulations, what happens is you get a letter from the DOE or the NCC, which basically says, look, we have evidence that you've been doing this. You should cease this activity. Here is why you should cease this activity. Here are the problems that are created by this, and we don't want you to continue doing this. So just stop doing it. So it's effectively like a warning. It's a cease and desist. Don't do it. And here's why. And then there was a second provision which said, which says, if you have been caught doing it for a second occasion, then there's a possibility of you being prosecuted. And at that point, the fine may be up to $5,000. And then the third occasion and subsequent occasions, and if you're a really habitual offender, it falls into this third bucket, which is the Section 38 of the National Conservation Act provision, with this really broad omnibus penalty provision, which is the one that goes up to $500,000 and up to 4 years or both. Now, clearly, there's a whole range of offenses that might fall under Section 38. And feeding feral animals is going to be really low on the list of offenses. It's not going to be viewed as hugely serious. So you're not going to be subjected to anything like $500,000, and it's unimaginable that any judge would say you're going to you're going to have a prison sentence for this. So the provision was established to ensure that there is this judicial flexibility. So on the one hand, if you negligently operate a vessel and you crash into the coral reef and damage our valuable coral reef, you may be subjected to a fine of several $100,000. In Florida, if you do it, if you negligently crash into their reef, I've seen fines there of $1.5 million on vessels that do that. I think they have some other provisions which go up to about $250,000, but that's not necessarily the end of it. I've seen, like I said, I've seen fines which are well in excess of $1 million. Our provision says up to $500,000. So it also covers things like if you are caught poaching, if you take too many lobster, or you take too many conch, or you take them out of season, and you're poaching, and we've got records of lots of judicial interpretation of this, and the application of fines of, in some cases, a few $100s, in some cases maybe $1,000 or $1,500 or something in that range. Obviously, nowhere near close to $500,000 or 4 years in jail. And then, on the lower end of the scale, it will be things like, that you're feeding feral chickens or feeding specifically you're feeding alien species in the wild or genetically modified species in the wild, and promoting the population growth of those by so doing. That is, it's a problem and you don't want to do it, but that's not going to result in you getting thousands of dollars in fine or anywhere near $500,000, or, it would be unimaginable that it would be a prison sentence. So what has happened here is people have looked at this and said, oh my God, you're going to charge people $500,000 and put them in jail for 4 years for feeding feral cats. No, that's not the position. That is not what is going to happen. But a judge, a layperson would look at it and have a bit of freak, and that's understandable. And that's what I anticipated by putting in these graduated provisions initially. including the warning letter. But at the end of the day, it's not a layperson that is going to decide what the relevant fine should be and how it should be, how you should be penalized for a breach. It is a trained judge, and judges are going to be following judicial sentencing guidelines, precedents, and they, if anything, this, Sandra, if anything, people complain about sentences being far less than what they think it should be, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, we had a situation with a guy who, fairly recently, with a guy who mutilated 12 or 13 chickens, cut the combs off and cut the spurs off and all this sort of stuff.
Yep.
And he was given 80 years of
80 hours.
Perhaps they would have been satisfied then. 80 hours of community service over the course of 12 months.
Yep.
And there were people saying, well, that's ridiculous, and So, if anything, people complain about the sentences being too light.
Too late, yeah.
But this, to suggest that the government was trying to, criminalize people, to sentence them to jail, to impose $500,000 in fines on them for feeding chickens and feral chickens and feral cats. Absolute nonsense. That is not the case.
Yes.
That would never be anticipated at all. No more than it was anticipated that this omnibus provision would be used to fine somebody $500,000 for taking 2 extra conch.
All right, we do have a call in the line. Good morning, call.
It's people with a particular agenda that are using this this situation to amplify this and appeal to the lack of knowledge and real understanding of these issues in the general public. So I understand some of the reaction, but please listen to the facts before you jump to conclusions.
All right. Well, I've always said if jumping to conclusions were a national sport, I think Cayman would definitely win a gold medal. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. I just want to say thank you to the premier for coming on and what I feel like is wasting his time having to explain this ridiculousness.
Right.
So thank you. And I want to apologize.
You're very welcome.
At the end of the day, some of these same people who are making him waste his time are going to be complaining about traffic. They're going to be complaining about housing. They're going to be complaining about X, Y, and Z. While he's having to spend his time explaining to you about cats and chickens. When we have I just find it really, they have this meme or whatever that came out is in a real place.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like that. Like we are focusing on cats and chickens when we have children being neglected, abused.
Exactly.
I agree.
For every 5 people that go out and foster a cat or spend however many hours trying to sue the government because of cats and dogs and chickens, if they would focus on human problems, let me tell you, Cayman would be a real place then, and we'd be an amazing place.
Thank
because
you.
I just
well,
think
the good thing is, Darren, I agree with you.
We're wasting our time on this when we have so much more important things to discuss.
And caller, I think the issue is right. This is an important issue, and like I always tell people, we can entertain more than one thought in our brains at the same time. So animals are important because I always feel in a community that if you can mistreat animals and the elderly, you've got some serious issues. So I think
agreed.
We make this a priority, but and it's because of misinformation. It's because of people not wanting to pay attention. Because even myself, I went back and did a bit of research. Here's another article that was updated in September of 2021 in the Miami Herald. Right? They're talking about, okay, let's say we want to say, well, maybe the local communications arm kind of fell, broke a toe, whatever, didn't quite get it right. The Miami Herald carried this story. It says, feral cat invasion is wiping out native species on Caribbean island. This was from 2021, and they were talking about Little Cayman, and they're talking about invasive species, right? I mean, there was also another one from, hold on, because there's lots of evidence that this is nothing new. Here is this one from PubMed. So this is a professional publication, prevalence of heartworm infection in the feral cat population of Grand Cayman. So someone actually did a study that was published in the National Library of Medicine. These are legit medical professional journals back in 2019 about the feral cat in the Cayman Islands having such a huge prevalence of heartworm. These poor cats have, they have a horrible life in the wild. And I don't know why anyone can't see how inhumane that is. Here's another headline from iNews, dated April of 2019.
I don't think any of us are saying, oh, let's kill the cats. Let's make a sport of it. Like, this is so fun. We love killing cats. We love killing chickens. Like, no one is saying that.
Yes, absolutely not.
And I don't necessarily fully agree with everything that's happening, but I just know that we have more important things to focus on.
Yeah. Thank you, caller.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much, there. And I agree. And I would be happy to be on here talking about, and which I will be looking forward to be doing really shortly. The government has a housing task force, and I'll be looking to start rolling out some of the recommendations that will have emanating from that to address the situation with the housing needs for Caymanians and young Caymanians in particular, but also looking at things like rental markets and the problems we're having with lack of availability and poor quality and all this sort of stuff. Of course, we're always have these current challenges of inflation and energy costs. We've got traffic issues, and there's lots of really good things going on where we're trying to confront these issues and address them in a proper way through a proper process.
Yes.
But this is one of the things that obviously people have jumped on board with and tried to make a real issue to effectively to try to attack the credibility of the government.
So let me just
nobody is going to attack my credibility when it comes to caring about people, caring about animals. I currently have 4 dogs. 3 of them are rescue dogs. I have 1 cat, and that's a rescue cat. So I'm doing my part, and I'm trying to make sure that our national assets in the form of our indigenous species are not being wiped out. We used to have thousands of boobies, brown boobies, for example, in the Brac, flying around there. We used to have loads of booby nests all over the cliff edge, the bluff edge, the face of the bluff. And we're now down to 50 breeding pairs of brown boobies. If people want to look at a beautiful bird, look up some of the pictures of the brown boobies, the Brac brown boobies. They are just absolutely gorgeous animals.
Let me, if you'll permit me to just
than our cats and dogs.
Yes, and we do have a caller who's on the line, but let me just permit me just 1 second to read this paragraph here again in the Miami Herald. I'll share the article dating back years. It says a viable human control program is desperately needed, but the government doesn't appear to have one. A viable humane control program is desperately needed, but the government doesn't appear to have one yet. Little Cayman is described by island tourism officials as and they put in quotes, serene landscape where the bustle of the birds at the Booby Pond Nature Reserve may be the loudest commotion on the island, and it's considered a top diving destination, according to dive training reports. Right. It goes on to say that government officials haven't exactly said how many feral cats are running amok on the island, but it's bad enough that small groups of some of the threatened species are being kept in cages for their own protection, officials have shared. And the cats were introduced by humans who refuse to take responsibility, the Little Cayman District Committee of the National Trust said in a Facebook post. And it goes on to quote them as saying, it is profoundly disturbing that native wild animals must be caged to protect them from invasive predators. This is what the National Trust said, folks. And there's no rational justification to create the need for such measures to try and prevent a unique species from going extinct. This is fundamentally wrong, plain and simple. So even the National Trust was quoted in the Miami Herald, article dating back years where they acknowledged the problem and they were in support of something being done in order to keep these native species alive. Caller, good morning. Oh, did we lose you? Oh, there you are. Good morning, caller.
Hello.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Calling again. Good morning to everybody. I just have a few questions I would like to ask as a young Caymanian, right? Mr. Premier, I've been waiting for this opportunity a while now, honestly. But I just want to ask, right? Because although I know that, yes, you guys have been making moves to do certain things in regards to housing for young Caymanians or whatever, none of us really know what is happening.
Right.
I'm not saying that you're not doing anything. I'm not saying that the government is not doing anything. What we're saying is we have no knowledge of what is going on at all. Because right now, I make good money, right?
Caller, can I just I just want to pause you 1 second. What we're going to do, and this is just for us to keep as organized as possible, right? We're actually going to address that issue directly in another show. So this show is really dedicated to dealing with this specific issue and this issue alone. And we will do a show on housing where the premier comes on and discusses that. So just hold those questions for me if you don't mind. And we want to deal with this whole, combobulation of feral cats and chickens and whatever. Put this to bed, hopefully today, and then we're going to get to the housing situation, and he will be happy to provide an update with that. Is that fair enough?
Sandra, can I just very quickly respond?
And not just housing, it's also the fact that all the jobs in Cayman that really create wealth have been pretty much given out to every foreigner that they can be given out. For example, real estate. In my opinion, there's no way in God's green earth why a foreigner should be allowed to come to any country and sell real estate. That should be a job for a local and a local only. 9 out of 10 of our real estate agents are foreigners, white. So what I'm saying? Stuff like that is, in my opinion, things that are more important than worrying about a feral cat and a chicken, honestly.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thanks very much, Colin.
But I just say in relation to, because I obviously understand his concern about that, but as an example, and perhaps this is a reflection of us having to do much more around it. I know that that my colleague, the minister, who deals with housing, Minister J. Ebanks, he has been on, for example, Radio Cayman. I think he's also come on to your show, Sandra, as well, and he's talked about the affordable housing program that the National Housing Development Trust is. Well,
clearly.
We haven't done enough, I guess.
Yes.
But so there will be, we will specifically, and I absolutely agree with you, I want to have a specific show dealing with this, and perhaps both of us, both he and I can be involved with it, to make sure that it's very clear what the government's program is and plans are around the issue of housing, both on the rental side and on the purchase and sale side for Caymanians generally and young Caymanians in particular, because we're taking a lot of actions, and these are going to be rolled out. We've already been doing a lot. One of the unfortunate things is, that we haven't done a lot in terms of publicizing what we have done to help young Caymanians acquire their own homes by way of stamp duty waivers or abatements. And that's an ongoing thing. We do that every day. We have loads of people loads of young Caymanians who are applying as first-time Caymanian homeowners. And there are some that are, more than first-time homeowners, but we are assisting them in being able to realize their dreams and improving their investment and financial position. So we're going to bring more transparency around that, and we're going to address the specific initiatives that we are undertaking to ensure that we we confront this problem, as we're doing with the traffic situation, and that is probably going to have to be a separate show as well. But I definitely want to address that and get into that. I want to take the opportunity to remind people that there will be at the second of the public consultation meetings for or on the terms of reference for the environmental impact assessment in relation to the east-west extension. That will be at the Baptist Church in Pedro, on Pedro Castle Road. I think it starts at about 6, maybe 6:30 this evening. So please come to that as well. And I think it was well attended in Northside last night. And it should, I hope to have it well attended again. But it is really important to get a lot of public feedback on these terms of reference and a lot of clarity. You can also watch it online. You can watch it as being streamed.
Yes, and we will be streaming it as well. But we've got quite a few callers calling in. Caller, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Yeah, morning, Sandy.
Morning, dear.
Morning, Mr. Wayne.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Alejandro speaking. By the way, Mr. Wayne, Alejandro speaking. You met me at the Coral Fest.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Last year. I was wondering if you watches National Geographic and Discovery Channel, Animal, Wildlife, or anything like this.
I watch as much as that as I can, but I have to say I don't get the opportunity as much. But yes, I love watching. Hear
my point of view of this whole debacle that we going on with. I was thinking to myself that if we can't handle the wild, then why are we bother trying to destroy it?
But when you say handle the wild, you're saying that feral cats are part of the wild. You do understand that they were introduced by humans, right?
Okay. Let me explain myself a little bit better then, because you're talking about booby birds and the chickens and the feral cats, right? The booby birds, for one, they don't have the best life neither. No animal ever has the best life, because if you know that the frigate birds that we see out there above the fishermen every day at the fish market, they can't even touch water 1 second of their life, because if they do that, their feathers will never dry. They can't fly. When not saying that they don't touch the water, but when they're hunting, they're pirates of the sea. They attack booby birds to catch their food when the booby birds have to come back home to feed their young. They do the most extreme. They're migratory birds as well. They don't have just only one type of booby bird. There is many types of booby birds out there, and majority of them are in the Pacific Ocean.
But caller,
now
let me ask you a question, right? Most animals have predators that are natural predators to them. Feral cats who've been introduced by human beings would not be natural predators. So what you're saying, it's okay to have the natural predators, which you just mentioned. It's okay to continue to allow the feral population, which was introduced into the Cayman Islands, that now we have indisputable evidence that they are impacting the actual numbers. They are impacting numbers. We've got footage, data to prove that that's actually the case, right? The numbers are on the decline significantly. And you're saying that that's okay because these birds have natural predators to allow an invasive species to do the same thing? To me, that doesn't even sound logical, Alejandro.
Well, is there a picture graph showing where all these complaints are being made that this is happening? Because
we're going to show, we've got some, stay tuned. We've got some video footage.
I can complain about this with the feral animals, right? Because we got wild chickens here. We don't tame them. They're not in a coop. We don't even have a house for them to sleep in. They sleep in the trees naturally. They come in the yard. They stay here. They eat what we got. And this is the thing. They have lizards running around the area as well. I have lion lizards, the ones that live on the beach, the ones that love to live on iron shore rocks. They are living inside the same yard. I have feral cats coming in, sleeping on our car tops. Not just saying this, just only my car top. They are sleeping on other people's car tops. They're eating in the middle of the night. I mean, I don't have no problem feeding them. I have a little sympathy for their souls. And they don't bother anything else. Everything is living in this area coexistently. Why? Because they're all being fed. Now, I'm not saying that I'm trying to tell everyone to feed their cats, feed their animals. Of course, if they're your animals, feed them. That's your responsibility. But if you're not feeding them and you're just allowing them to be inside and start hunting the place down, what other instincts do you expect them to have?
But
I clip
Alejandro,
cats' claws. Listen, I clip cats' claws and I've tamed them. They play with lizards and let them go free.
All right, Alejandro. There's undisputed evidence. Forget Cayman. Worldwide, there is undisputed evidence that cats are predatory, whether they are being fed or not. This isn't about feeding them, right? That is simply what they do. All right, let me have you leave it. Let me have you leave it there. Let me have you leave it there.
Just these cats.
Yeah, let me have you leave it there, folks. This is one of the reasons why even PETA and other organizations have said that the trap, spade, and release programs do not work even, right? I've got some video footage and pictures because now he's asking for evidence. Don't worry. We got receipts that we can show you from taken right here from in the Cayman Islands of exactly what these predatory feral cats are actually doing. Right? This is misinformation for you to say if we feed them, they're going to stop a behavior that is instinctive to them. No, they won't. Even your house cat, right, that is well fed will kill any insects or whatever that's in your house. Now, you might not mind if that's in your house, but that same predatory behavior when they're on the outside, this is why you must contain your cats, keep them inside. Yeah. That same behavior exists when they're outside of your home. So, I mean, we've got to accept facts. Like you can't continue to debate.
We've all had experiences with our cats that we let out for a bit. They'll come back and bring little presents for us and put it on the doormat.
Yes, child.
They haven't eaten it, but they've killed them. Sometimes it's a bird. Sometimes it's a mouse. Sometimes it's a snake. So this is a problem. They are constantly, just because you feed them doesn't mean they're going to stop killing.
No.
That's what they do.
Like I said, again, there's tons of research that has proven, and we will have videos. We've got some evidence. So at the end of the program, don't hang up at the end, because there is substantial evidence, and there's a guy who scientifically with his whiteboard is going to break it down for you as to why it doesn't work. I know that you think on the face of it, well, that sounds like a good idea. We keep them, fed, and they're going to be happy, and they're not going to harm anything else. But that just doesn't happen. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Sandy.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, it's Eden. Good morning, Premier. I hope.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to add to this discussion because I keep cats and we love them, and we've recently made sure our cats are indoor, and we have renovated our patio to be a proper catio for them so they could be outside and have pet safe screen on it and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Our cats that we used to keep outside both passed from mystery diseases that the vets couldn't diagnose, and they were well fed. Both of them were fixed. And the big one that looked like he could barely move an inch, I saw him devour a banana quit fledgling within 5 seconds, right in front of our front door. And this is a well-fed, giant 25-pound cat.
Wow.
Okay. And that's so unless these people, yeah, he was one of the biggest cats I've ever seen in my life. Unless the people who are saying that they're fed cats don't devour anything have a camera on those cats' collars, or they are looking at them 24 hours a day. I am telling you right now, and this cat ate that bird. Okay, he ate the bird. Now, it was a tiny little fledgling. We had been watching them nest in our front yard in the maho tree, and that experiences like that, and having to mercy kill Julia butterflies and mercy kill blue anoles because the cats have torn them up and just left them there. It started to really get to my soul, right? And so this isn't just about boobies, it's about our backyard ecology. And now my cats are inside. I know they're safe. I know they're disease free. They're not getting, my dog patrols our yard so we don't have other cats, and I have nesting pairs of birds in our yard because I planted trees and because I pulled our cats inside. So for everyone out there who says that their cats aren't doing any damage, aren't killing any native animals, aren't killing any ceres, or aren't killing any iguanas, or aren't killing any native birds, if they are not keeping track of them 24/7, then I do not believe them.
Yeah,
not
absolutely.
for 1 second.
Absolutely.
And science shows us, and my own eyes have shown me what differently. They will hunt and they will kill even if they don't eat, and they will still eat even if they're fed.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
So it's not generally because they're not gluttonous. They're not like dogs where they're scavengers, right? But it will still happen. So we need to stop talking foolishness. We need to become aware of basic ecology and basic ecological principles that are at play here. Caymanians we like to deny things in order to shore up our idea of what our culture is. Okay, and we have to stop doing that. If we're going to be calling ourselves native people, we need to start living like native people. And in other places, other jurisdictions where this battle is being fought around feral cats and stuff, it is the indigenous who are driving the cull of cats, the humane cull of cats, in defense of their native animals.
Exactly. I mean, the last time we had this discussion,
we need to defend our natives.
Yeah.
How we treat these animals and how we protect our native animals is the same way that we're dealing with our people.
Yeah.
We shove them aside
you know what,
when it's
Eden?
time for non-natives to come in, and it's the same way. So this is an important topic in that how we deal with this will show how we deal with our people.
Yeah. And Eden, I must say that
to take care of natives all across the board.
I must say that last time that we had this discussion, we were talking about the case study in Australia, and the native people in Australia have said, listen, historically, you know, these feral cats were introduced by the Europeans. They were not here with us as native, you know, indigenous aborigines and whatever to the continent of Australia. And, you know, they are culling them and they can't keep up because they're so pervasive. And this continues to be an issue. But as you said, the natives appreciate that these cats are wiping out entire species. Once a species is wiped out, that's it. There's no bringing them back. You know, we haven't quite perfected that in terms of a lab yet. But, you know, it's happening, and it's not unique to the Cayman Islands. It's happening elsewhere. And yes, the native people are, you know, you can do it humanely, but they appreciate
big challenge for many
the necessity to do
island
it.
states, nations.
Yeah, and we've talked about that as well, because islands are particularly, I mean, a lot of islands have ecosystems and species that have developed because they've been separated for, you know, ever from mainlands. We have very unique ecosystems. Yeah.
They don't have,
right.
They don't have,
so they have
serious
they
predators on
develop
land.
very unique.
Jonathan says, don't worry about the crybaby people. They're going to get over it. What a
they're not
mess.
used to the predation.
Yeah.
Right, right. Hawaii is a good example, and there the indigenous fought a battle and went to the legislature in order to have the cull instated, and that was indigenous elders who went, and for a couple of years, 4 years or something, they were doing the same thing with the Humane Society and stuff like that. The same people who were in favor of and it just wasn't working. And they have the same thing there: no severe land predators. They have ground nesting birds, and they were seeing the decline in numbers. And it was indigenous elders who went to bat for their other native relatives, which are these animals. Okay, so if we're going to be native, if we're going to call ourselves native, let's start living like how native people do, and let's protect natives.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right,
thank
folks.
you both for airing this.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
And I see we do have a hard stop today at 9:30, because today is the day that Miss Tiffany Conley will find out what the court is doing with her. So I've got to get to court this morning. So 9:30, we got to cut it, but we will play a video after that. I think Kevin's going to jump in and end the show after for me. But we do have a video that's a combination of what is happening here on our island with these cats. They have camera footage. They've caught them doing these very things. I mean, I think, as Eden rightfully said, you know, people who say that, oh, my cat is well fed and he's not doing anything, you have no idea. Try putting a pet camera on that cat and watch their movement 24/7. Now, I see a lot of you in relation to the caller who called in about the housing issue saying, we've got all these other important issues. Yes, we do. And trust me, I would rather today be talking about probably anything else. But this is an issue now that we have the Humane Society, which, by the way, can I just say to the Humane Society, I ran into one of their board members a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to call any names. And this person said to me, you know, we've come to accept that this is going to be necessary and this is going to have to be done. It's only after weeks of the community being up in arms about it that now they seem to have changed their position and asking for repeal of a law or regulations that are already in place. And I'm like, didn't this board member just tell me that the board had accepted that this was a necessary evil? You know, sometimes I feel like people, whether it's NPOs, environmental groups, animal groups, sometimes they also have an agenda of their own. And sometimes they're just trying to be people pleasers instead of dealing with the reality. This is just my opinion. This has nothing to do with the premier. I'm telling you guys what I think. And so I think they bow to pressure, just like politicians sometimes bow to pressure. They bow to pressure from a vocal minority when they need to just hold their ground. Anyway.
I have to say that I was very disappointed in this letter from the Humane Society on this issue. I found it to be nothing but sound bites designed to be sensational, not accurate, glossing over a lot of very important details and facts. So I am going to provide today a response to the Humane Society. Obviously, I am not going to take the same approach where it's going to be one page with sound bites. I'm going to provide more details. But I'm very disappointed in their approach. You know, as you noted, I understood that was a position of the Humane Society. None of us like to have to do this. And so I'm not surprised that they would not be particularly happy about having to cull cats, feral cats.
Mm-hmm.
But to at this point issue this kind of letter, it seems to undermine, to me, it undermines their credibility as a legitimate organization that has done really, really good work in Cayman, and it flies in the face entirely with their own published remit. If you look at their website and you see what they're talking about controlling the population of animals to help to protect Cayman's own important endemic species. So, you know, I'm going to have to point out to them some of these things. I will also say that last year in June, there was a trapping and culling which occurred in Little Cayman again. And one of the staff members of the Humane Society was invited along, went along with the team of you know, the veterinary surgeon and those other members who were dealing with this issue in Little Cayman to trap and humanely euthanize some of these animals. The reason that staff member went along was to ensure that they were satisfied that the animal was being treated humanely, and they didn't have any concerns around it. Now, I did not get a letter from them saying in June last year or in July last year saying, you know, last month one of our staff members went along, observed this. We're really concerned about, you know, the humane treatment of these feral cats and the way they're being culled. Please address this. I got nothing. First thing I know about their view on this is a letter which they've posted on social media addressed to me specifically, making all these inflammatory little soundbite statements saying that I've regressed animal welfare in the country by these regulations. You know, it's nonsense. Well,
Carlos,
these regulations don't actually deal with welfare, by the way. Welfare is dealt with under the
animal law.
But clearly,
the
Animals Act. So clearly, if there was an issue, their staff member should have been able to identify this in June last year. So I'm very disappointed, but you know, this is, I think this represents probably a small element of the Humane Society who have sort of taken over this issue and run with it and drafting this sort of this kind of letter with all these inaccuracies and trying to be sensational about it.
All right,
nobody's happy about this, but it's important that we get it done.
Yes. So we do have a caller, and we also have Carlos Whitaker, my apologies, saying that in the 1970s, stray dogs were roaming our famous 7 Mile Beach. When they started attacking tourists, we at the agriculture department were given tranquilizer guns to hunt them down and euthanize them. Wow. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Wayne. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, sir. Good, sir. This is Jonathan talking to you. Jonathan Allen, sir. I understand the position that you and the Department of Environment are in. We all know the history with the various groups standing in the way of what, in my humble opinion, has always been a necessary action to be taken. There is also, Mr. Wayne, truth being spoken as it pertains to the other factors that has resulted in the death, the destruction and the near extinction of not only the booby birds, but a lot of the native wildlife that we have here in Cayman. And one of them is the wanton development of coastal regions, and where more often than not you see the entire coastline be altered to where
so
it's
habitat
not conducive
impact.
to those animals being allowed to be there. And, there's other factors at play, sir. And I'd like to just steer a little bit away from the seabird situation for a moment and point out a couple of things there. We have here on Grand Cayman particularly, we have what is called Croton scale, which has decimated and destroyed the birch trees. The only reason they survive mainly is because they're deciduous and the leaves come back from the damage. And the wild fig. One of the things that has happened, and thus far there's no real impetus to deal with it, is that the food for a lot of our native, indigenous, and also migratory birds has been taken away from them by this disease. Now, I can tell you for a fact I've seen my little piece of ground up in East End, the wild bird population decreased by easily 85%. That's just my observation. I have seen people come and throw away their unwanted cats and dogs around by where I am up in that area. That is definitely a part of it. Thus far, I haven't been able to bring myself to kill a cat, but I also can agree with the government's position that it is necessary. So I support that initiative, but I also would ask for a wider view of all of the factors that are in play, whether it be here in Grand Cayman, on Cayman Brac, or in Little Cayman, collectively. So I do support it. One quick suggestion to you, sir, as it pertains to the rat issue, and we all know that they are very destructive. There's a product called the Good Nature A24, which is powered by a little CO2 cartridge, and it's a very quick, non-toxic way of dispatching rats in large numbers. And I would suggest to you to please ask Miss Gina to look into that product as a possible solution for a test. They're not cheap, but they work very well, and you end up with something that will kill the rats, and then whatever's left of our owl or raptor population comes in, and they can eat the thing without being poisoned, and they themselves die. But I'd just like to say, Mr. Wayne, that if we are going to approach this, we have to look at all of the factors. I know you're well aware of that. But the overdevelopment is definitely a part of the problem. I don't see you as diminishing that, but I also want to point out that I would like to see you identifying that as one of the issues as well, to bring more of a broad approach to this, which is necessary to point out all of the factors. I do not agree whatsoever with the steps that the Cayman Islands Humane Society has taken. I think that they, along with other specific lobbyist groups, need to have a more objective approach to this. And there are other things that need to be done. And it needs to be looked at holistically. So personally, I 100% agree that a call needs to happen. And I really hope, Mr. Wayne, that you will forward this information in regards to the rats, because there's been this there's been this anecdote that you take away the cats, then all the rats are going to overpopulate. I know different. However,
because in fact, the rats are just good at hiding when the cats are out, so to speak. Right?
Yeah, the cats are excellent predators.
Yeah.
And they are going to take the easiest prey that they can, and rats are difficult. Difficult prey. They're extremely intelligent, but they are an issue. They're destructive.
Yes.
They're destructive to wildlife. They're destructive to crops, so on and so forth. So I hope that little suggestion will be taken on board, Mr. Wayne.
Thank you much.
And you guys have a good day.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Appreciate that.
So, folks, lots of people calling in now. We've got just about 15 minutes left in the program. So just want to read a few comments as well, trying to balance everything that we've got being thrown at us. So let me just see. So Johan Moxham is weighing in the discussion this morning. Johan has said from quite early on, something drastic has to be done. Are they prepared to adopt the feral cats and cage the wild chickens? They are truly a public nuisance, and something drastic has to be done. He goes on to say, when animal rights of any invasive wild animal are deemed more important than care and concern for your fellow man, I think that's supposed to be than care and concern for your fellow man, I think it's fair to say that things have swung too far in a particular direction. He also says the premier of the Cayman Islands is on a radio talking about drastic measures to curb wild animals and regulations. That had a poor PR strategy, not a civil servant in sight to explain their role in PR FUPA. We do not have a world-class civil service. There are multiple examples of this. Today is another example. KY is not a real place. Hashtag repent. Hashtag end of days. Oh, Lord. Johan also says, did anyone object to the culling of green iguanas? We've got a caller on the line. I think so. Good morning. Hi, caller. Hello? Caller?
Hello, good morning.
Hi, morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning to our honorable premier right there. Calling
good
regarding,
morning to you there.
I don't know if it's a specific topic or it's an open mic.
Yes, it is.
Is it an open mic or?
No. We want to try to keep it to the feral cats and chickens today.
Oh, well, I was going to get rid of some of the indigenous species. I was going to ask the premier what he was on. He's the best one to ask the question. We want to know what time, that regarding the water sports industry, regarding the water sports industry and the taxes, what time, now we have a moratorium, and what time are they going to put a law in place that only indigenous Caymanians indigenous Caymanians be protected? Because right now, we got a new thing coming in place now with the luxuries down at Ritz-Carlton. Do you think that there's any Caymanians who are going to be able to get any more business from that area as long as they put that policy in place? I want to leave it there, and I'll listen on the radio for it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. So someone says, that we should be talking about other issues. I responded to them and I said, well, if you guys would get off of this feral cats and chicken situation, we could. And the response, was if they were doing this for years, obviously it's not working. Let us be very clear about what the factual position is. They have done it in the past and they've done it for years. However, they stopped because of opposition from animal rights groups who decided to bring a judicial review against the Department of Environment. Even a couple years. Please stay tuned for the video that's going to be coming up here shortly, folks. Even stopping a culling program for a couple years allows these ferocious breeders to overpopulate to a position that you'd be shocked at. So the position right now is most urgent, especially on the sister islands. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we're very, very clear about why this has to start in earnest. The Department of Environment, I think, needs to do more education about how they're euthanizing the cats. For those of you who are concerned that it might not be done in a, humane way, maybe we need to do a drive along with them if you guys want to see it. to make sure that it meets your medical standards. I don't know what will satisfy you, but it is something that is necessary. And sometimes, folks, you've got to bend the tree in order to have it grow in a particular direction. So just anything in life, sometimes, you've got to do something that's going to be a little bit painful at the moment, but the end result is what you're eventually trying to get to. So we just have a couple moments left in the program. Let me clarify something again as it relates to misunderstanding of the regulations. So the penalties which are being described, for example, by the Humane Society as disproportionate are intended for the worst case possible offenses under the National Conservation Act. And by the way, they are number penalties, not just in relation to cats and chickens, okay? The alien species regulations adopted in November of 2022 provided that an offense committed under these regulations be dealt with what's called a graduated penalty scheme. So in other words, first offense, you're all the way down here. Second offense, you can move up a little bit up the totem pole. Third offense, and for the people who are the worst offenders, right, they will be looking at more and more and more penalties and sentencing, etc. The penalties are determined by a judge based on the severity of the offense, and a judge would only issue penalties if the crime was severe. For example, feeding or breeding alien species on an industrial scale. And penalties are meant to cover a broad range of offenses, including, all y'all out there now, pay attention. Same ones on the show yesterday saying, don't build that road. You need to pay attention to the offenses under this legislation, right? Dredging, quarries, or other environmental damage to protected areas. So that's what the $500,000 fine, I'm sure, would be applied to if it's ever going to be applied. Not you feeding some feral cat. We need to dispel the misinformation that is in circulation in this community, right? Offenses under the National Conservation Act, there are a lot of offenses. And so this $500,000 plus or 4 years imprisonment, whatever it is, it doesn't just apply, and I don't think the intent really is it to apply to feral cats and chickens, but a judge would make that decision. Would you not want a commercial institution who's dredging up the mangroves to be fined $500,000? I'm pretty sure if you thought about it, you probably would. All right, folks, just a few minutes left in the program. Miss Amelia, I know that you were trying to call in, honey chow. Let's see if we can get her on the program. We need to make sure that it's on topic, first of all, and that it is a quick comment. Miss Amelia, on topic and quick comment, feral cats and chickens. Try and behave yourself, because I know you're not calling about that, but that's all I want to hear about this morning. I gotta come visit you. I know where you live,
Good morning, Premier. Please ignore Sandy right now.
I will just for you. And good morning to you there.
I'm really off the topic, but it's with good cause, Sandy. Premier, I want to bring to your attention. I came in from Jamaica on Sunday night. I did not fill out a form to come in, a declaration form, and I walked right out. I think that's a security breach. I think it needs serious attention looking in, because at the end of the day, we're wondering why how guns and drugs are getting into our country. The simplest looking people that you think would not harm an ant or would not do any form of crime, they are the ones who are bringing these things and allowed to walk through our customs and come out into our island and let all of these things happen. And I mean, to me, it's serious. It should not be. Well, even if they had a detector machine for people to walk through, if they don't have anything to declare, their bikes go through an X-ray machine, I wouldn't feel as concerned. But I am so concerned, sir, to see that people are allowed to walk out of customs without any form of check. And bear in mind, where they're coming from, yes, they're checked. But bear in mind, we also have criminals checking these people as well. So, I mean, I'm asking if there's somewhere you can look into that to have that cease, because then that's a security breach.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
thank you.
I'll have to I'd have to talk to the director of the CBC in respect to that. But obviously, they, just very quickly, they obviously take different approaches to managing the risk. They do a risk assessment and they figure out how best to manage these risks and how to how to give themselves the best possible chance of detecting people who are coming through with things. So they do a lot of profiling, and they're very adept. They're very experienced at doing this sort of thing, because we do see very often the prosecutions that are occurring for things like smuggling, where they've been caught coming through. So if you're a Caymanian and you say you're within the limits and you have nothing to declare, typically you walk through, but they're keeping an eye on you, and if they think you're acting suspiciously, they may pull you aside and do a check. So this is typically the way this is addressed. But I'll have a conversation with the chief officer and he can talk with him and see with the head of CBC and see if there's anything that should be addressed.
And I think the head of CBC had said to me a few weeks ago that he actually wanted to come on the program. Caller, good morning. Welcome to the program. Final call of the day.
Good morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Last but not least.
Good morning.
Yes, morning.
Good morning to the folks in the studio, including Premier. To Miss Welcome, who just hung up there. Yes, sir. To Miss Welcome, who just hung up there. Miss Welcome, that's a feather in your cap as far as I'm concerned. To say that it may not be correct procedure in your eyes and my eyes, but I think that's a feather in your cap also, ma'am. And based upon what Premier just said, just hold that as a feather in your cap. That your folks could look at you and know we can wave her through, even though we know procedurally, I think it is not quite right. But I call that a feather in your cap, ma'am. You have a nice day.
Thank you so much, caller. Premier Panton, thank you very much for coming on the program today. Like I said, folks, we got to cut it short. We got things to do. We do have RMR says the fake outrage and likes have gone on for far too long. I encourage our government, led by our Honorable Premier, to fast track the cat culling. Dean, good morning to you. Late this morning, but still here, says good morning to the Premier. Mr. Amelia, we'll have CBC on and you can talk about those criminals all you want. And Jonathan feels like wasted so much time on this cat subject. Can we talk about something more interesting like the referendum? Jonathan, that will have to be saved for another day. Premier Panton, thank you for coming on the program, folks. We want to encourage you to stay tuned because we've got video footage for those of you who believe the cats are innocent and they're not doing anything. The cat cams have proven otherwise. So we have those coming up. Premier Panton, welcome back to Premier Access Thursdays. We try to do it every other Thursday. I know that we missed the month of January, but we're in full swing now. And we got lots of topics to cover, everything from housing, employment, rental abuses. The list goes on and on and on. So what can I say?
Yep. Well, you've said a lot, Sandy, and thank you very much. Thank you for your support as usual. And you the way that you inform yourself, you educate yourself on these issues. So that you can actually contribute very meaningfully to the discussion and assist listeners in clarifying what the issues are and what the facts are around them. This has been an enjoyable time this morning with you. I'm glad to be back. I promise you I will record that intro for you so that it's accurate. We have a new one there. So we'll get that done. And I want to just thank all of those people who have been participating this morning, those who are listening, those who have commented and called in. It is really heartening to know that there are people who are willing to listen and understand and not be overreactive and not respond to the sensationalism that some people are engaged in, unfortunately. This has not been a pleasant thing to be talking about. As I said to you, it's not something that I would want to have to do, but it is something that clearly is necessary. It's a problem that has developed. They're well-meaning people. They believe in trapping, neutering, and releasing cats. something which they would never do in relation to dogs. So that is, to me, that's an illogical and irrational distinction that even the Humane Society seems to be making. So I don't quite understand why they're coming at this with this sort of contradictory position. But the reality is, feral cats are a problem, and they have to be addressed. I know everybody who's involved with this, from the director all the way down. We all have our animals. We all love our animals, but we all have to understand that there are certain responsibilities and certain things that we have to do, both individually as well as collectively as a country, to ensure that our own indigenous Caymanian species are protected. And yes, there will be lots of time for another program, probably several programs, to talk about protecting the Caymanians, our indigenous Caymanians. But I think people need to understand as well that a Caymanian is a person who has Caymanian status, right? Yes, there are some of us who have been here a lot longer, but at the end of the day, once we all have status, we're all in the same level, and it's sometimes let's put it this way: it's getting more and more difficult to recognize other people as Caymanians, and we just can't make assumptions that certain people that we see are not Caymanians and don't have the same rights that we have. So thank you again.
Thank you
Sandy,
very much.
I really appreciate it. It's been a great discussion. And I look forward to lots of other really important discussions and interaction with the public. It's been wonderful. So thank you. I want to wish everybody a wonderful Thursday. And of course, we've got a weekend coming up. Next week, we're going to have, is it the next week or the following week? We'll have, I think it's been indicated that there will be a royal visit, and then we'll have the agriculture show. So lots of good things coming up over the coming weeks for us to be engaged in. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we're addressing the issues that are really important to our people, that make a difference in their lives every single day. That's what this government is here to try to address.
Appreciate it.
Have a great day. Love to all.
Thank you, Premier Panton. All right, folks. Again, I have got a job to do on your behalf this morning. Really, really important breaking news. We might even come live from you at the courthouse as the verdict comes in for Miss Cayman. So I'm going to go pull on my pants. I'm not pantsless, but I'm wearing shorts. So I'm going to pull on my proper attire and jet out the front door. But in the meantime, here's a video. This is a compilation of photos, video from Department of Environment. They've captured the cats in the act. They put little cat cams on them. And as they say, sometimes you really don't know what's going on until you put on that hidden camera, honey child. Some of y'all need inside your homes too. But anyway, we won't go there this morning. And there's also an educational video. There's one from PETA, and there's one from a guy who explains the concept of the capture, spade, and release and why it doesn't work. Scientifically, it doesn't work. And I want y'all to listen to what he has to say. He has out his whiteboard. He's making notes. So y'all have a beautiful day until tomorrow morning. Stay blessed, not stressed, and I'll talk to you then.
Yeah, the calico and the tabby. They must be part of a now this rooster's coming in.
Welcome to Whiteboard Friday. It's a new week and a new angle for our whiteboard. This is innovation, folks. This week we're talking about trap, neuter, return. So this is the SPCA's policy where they trap stray cats new to them and return them into stray cat colonies. So this is a policy that Maggie Barry was speaking yesterday at Zealandia about and has come out against this policy of trap, neuter, return. Now, first up, if you're wondering what a colony of stray cats looks like, well, we actually got some footage from the Wellington region. So this is under the house of a Wellington resident. There was a stray cat colony near this house, and the woman who lived there was feeling sorry for the cats, decided to start feeding them out of the goodness of her own heart, and of course, the problem just multiplied from there. So let's hear what Maggie Barry had to say about this issue. I think it's one of the most foolish and counterproductive techniques I've ever heard. She goes on to say, cats that have been spayed and released are a big problem. If the SPCA capture wild cats, they should be put down in a humane way, or they should offer them to people. John Key's response was to have a conversation with his cat. The SPCA's response is that they are looking to see how the welfare of native birds could be alongside that of stray cats and dogs. It's a little bit like walking into the Gaza Strip and saying, "Kumbaya, guys, can't we just get along?" Well, actually, we know the evidence on this policy of trap, neuter, return because the New Zealand Vets Association have done a major study looking at all the international evidence on it. Let's hear what they found. Trap, neuter, return would not be a judicious strategy for the majority of stray cats, as it is costly, does not stop predation of wildlife by cats, and has little effect on the spread of diseases. They go on to say there's also little evidence that clearly shows TNR improves cat welfare or results in a population decline on a broad scale. Let's have a quick look at the numbers behind the work that the NZ Vets Association has done. And the key number you need to know is that actually cats breed really fast. A couple of cats can very quickly, within a year, have 12 kittens, and that goes on exponential. So that's 3 litters, totaling about 12 kittens over a year. So New Zealand has somewhere between 200,000 and 1 million stray cats in the country. Some people think it's probably more at the top end. In Rotorua alone, the SPCA has said that there are roughly 40 to 50,000 stray cats. These are unowned cats hanging around towns. And because cats breed so quickly, to manage these sorts of numbers, these sorts of populations of cats, you need to neuter roughly 90% of the population. Now, the SPCA's current trap, neuter, return policy only neuters a small fraction of these, a tiny fraction of these, so we're nowhere near the level that is needed to get the cat population under control. Again, another figure from an Auckland cat charity is that they estimate that there are 1 million unowned kittens born every year in Auckland. Very sadly, the majority of these die. So the SPCA's trap, neuter, return policy really just pushes the stray cat problem onto other charities. We know that because, again, this same Auckland charity roughly takes care of 9,000 stray cats per year, and they are really just scratching at the surface. So you can see that trap, neuter, return cannot reduce the cat population on a broad scale. It really can't deal with the scale of the stray cat population simply because you have to neuter 90% of cats to have any impact. Otherwise, they will just keep breeding. And to make matters worse, in a lot of these colonies, they are feeding these stray cats, which of course just attracts more stray cats and allows them to breed even more. So you need a lot of people, a lot of crazy cat ladies to manage these stray colonies and to make them very effective. And there are certain studies which shown that they have been effective on a very small scale in the United States. But again, they need a lot of people monitoring these cats to make sure that enough of them are sufficiently spayed or neutered and that they are properly looked after. So it's incredibly expensive. That's the NZVA's other point. In fact, one study shows that it is cheaper to pay people to euthanize cats than it is to have an army of volunteers operating trap, neuter, and return. Sadly, it is just a far cheaper way to get our stray cat population under control. You know, this trap, neuter, return policy is also bad for cats. It's bad for pet cats because these stray cats spread disease, and also the life that these stray cats have is often punctuated by disease, accidents, and fights between them. So their welfare is not that great either. It's bad for cats, and that's why a lot of cat-loving societies actually say that every cat should be an owned cat, or as we say, every cat should be in a lap. No problem with cats in general, but we should definitely make sure that they're all owned and that owners are responsible with them. And finally, trap, neuter, return is unequivocally bad for wildlife. After all, these cats may be neutered, but it doesn't stop them from hunting. As a famous advocate in the United States pointed out, we're not worried about these cats making love to native wildlife. We're worried about them killing our native wildlife. So neutering them does not help in that respect. And it's no point wishful thinking that these cats don't kill our native wildlife. So sorry, SPCA, but it's time to end trap, neuter, return. It doesn't reduce the population, it's expensive, it's bad for cats, and it's bad for our native wildlife.
Trap, neuter, release, or TNR, may sound nice, but the grim reality for the estimated 80 million homeless cats struggling to survive outdoors is far worse than it sounds. Stray and feral cats don't die of old age. The average lifespan of a free-roaming cat is just 1 to 5 years, compared to 12 to 20 years for a cat who's kept safely indoors and taken to the vet when ill or injured. Every day, cats outdoors get hit by cars, which often doesn't kill them outright, but still causes immense suffering until they succumb to their injuries. Homeless cats also die of dehydration when summer heat dries up their water source, or when water freezes in winter for days at a time. And they suffer from malnutrition and starvation when internal parasites consume them from the inside out, causing a slow and painful death. Common conditions like upper respiratory infections, urinary obstructions, flea infestations, ear mites, and abscesses can become deadly when left untreated. Free-roaming cats are also attacked by roaming dogs and abused and killed by human beings, many of whom consider cats a nuisance and do terrible things to them, poisoning them with antifreeze, shooting them, and more. Feral and homeless cats are not super felines. They're identical to the cats who share our homes, and they deserve to be treated with the same care and respect. If we wouldn't throw our own cats out onto the mean streets, we shouldn't agree with abandoning any cat to that fate. Bust the trap, neuter, abandon fantasy. Keep cats indoors, spay and neuter, and help pass and get enforced ordinances that require responsible cat guardianship. Visit PETA.org to learn how you can prevent the suffering of homeless cats, humanely and responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM. Cayman's #1 talk show is live weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Never miss an episode again. Watch anytime on CMR's Facebook and YouTube channels for the latest show episodes. Don't forget to follow us online on our social media channels. And visit CaymanMarlRoad.com for all the latest news and community happenings.